Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and this is our Rivals of Ixalan pre-release primer. It's finally coming up. It feels like we waited forever, but this weekend, beginning around the world, Friday at midnight, and going throughout the weekend at local game stores, you will be able to find Rivals of Ixalan pre-release tournaments. Now, this video is really aimed to the newer player. Maybe you've never gone to a pre-release tournament before. We're going to talk about what you want to know. What should you bring with you? What does it entail? What can you expect? And as far as the set itself goes, what kind of mechanics should you be aware of? As well as some set synergies you may find within your sealed pool. Now, quickly before we get started, if you're looking for a way to support what we do here at the channel, just a quick reminder, you can check the description below. You'll find links to our Patreon page, as well as links to some products on Amazon. If you make any purchases, once you go through that link to Amazon, we'll get a small percentage no matter what it is. And also, finally, Flipside Gaming still offering a promo code. You can pick up Rivals of Ixalan, among many other things there. And again, it helps us out when you use that promo code. So with that being said, let's get into it. We're going to start off with the simple question, what should I bring? So this is probably the most common question that I hear. And you don't necessarily have to bring a ton of stuff with you. Some people choose to bring more, like trade binders or maybe some extra decks to play Commander or something like that after the games are over. But you don't have to do that. You can keep it pretty simple. I would recommend they have a backpack, though, with a few things. And some of the key things I would say is a pen. Pen and paper is great, but even if you don't bring the paper, bring a pen. And here's why. Game stores for tournaments, a lot of times you have to fill out some sort of paperwork, whether it's just like your name, DCI number, just so they can enter you into the computer. Or else if you don't have a DCI card, which you very well may not, if this is your first tournament, you may have to fill out a form to get one of those as well. So finding a pen in a game store sometimes can be challenging. Some game stores will be stocked, but others just won't have enough. You'll have to wait or try to borrow a pen. Or worse yet, some stores have sold pens at tournaments. I've seen this. You don't want to be spending money on a pen. Now, the paper, too, is a good idea to have because it just helps you keep track of things that could happen within the game. One way you could actually keep track of your life total is pen and paper. That's actually the preferred way when you get into more competitive Magic. And if you maybe are thinking about getting into more competitive tournaments, it's a good habit to get into. Now, your pre-release kit is going to come with a spin-down die to help you keep track of your life. You certainly can use that. There's no reason you have to use pen and paper. But if you want to get into that habit, it's something to start thinking about as early as your first tournament, honestly. Now, another thing you may want to bring are just some other random dice. You are going to get the 20-sided dice that counts down your life, but the problem with that is it's not a randomized dice, so it's kind of a faux pas to roll that to see who goes first technically. Again, this is a casual tournament. It's not going to be like really, really strict, so most of the time it's not a huge deal. But again, just getting into the good habits. If you roll randomized dice, that's the more appropriate way to decide like who goes first or something like that. Also, the dice will help you keep track of other things that might be going on within the game, like number of tokens you have or counters and stuff like that. Another thing I would recommend is sleeves for your cards. Now, I know not everybody cares about like maintaining mint cards or the value of cards or anything like that. You might just want to play. But when you sit down and play 4 or 5 rounds at a game store, the tables might not always be very clean at certain places. And even if they are clean, it's just natural that people are sitting at the table, they're playing Magic. And the cards are going to start to get a little grimy. They're going to get hard to shuffle, start sticking together a little bit. So I do like getting some sleeves, like the little matted sleeves that aren't too expensive. Like, you don't have to necessarily spend a lot of money on expensive sleeves. They just need to last you through the tournament and not completely break down, right? So if you get some sleeves, make sure you have extras, though, because if you bring them from home or if you buy a pack, you want to make sure you have extra ones because your deck's going to be about 40 cards. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And if a sleeve breaks, you don't want to have to buy a whole new pack of sleeves because you can't find a matching sleeve, right? So try to buy a little extra or bring a little extra with you. Now, some players use playmats, and they're great, but I wouldn't necessarily pay the money for one if you're not sure you're going to go to a lot of other tournaments. So try this one out first, use the sleeves, and if you feel like you're going to play more often, then I would think about investing in a playmat. Finally, a deck box or maybe a binder or something like that just to keep your cards organized in your backpack and safe. You will get a cardboard deck box, basically, which is your pre-release kit. But it is cardboard, it's flimsy, it doesn't necessarily protect your cards in a backpack, so you might want something a little sturdier. Or if you're playing in a couple different events, or perhaps trying to organize cards you want to trade, cards you want to keep, it's good to have other deck boxes or binders or something like that to keep those things in, so you want to keep that in mind. So those are really the tools, at least the physical tools you'll need to play the game or think about playing the game. Another thing I would suggest is maybe a snack, water, stay hydrated. Some stores will sell bottled water, but they will charge a lot for it typically. And they will sell some food, but it's usually snack food, not always something you want to eat. I mean, it's like candy bars, typically soda, energy drinks, maybe chips. So bring something that you want. Maybe if you want something healthier like granola bars or some sort of trail mix or something like that, it's easy to carry in your backpack. Bring some bottled water, something like that. Stay hydrated. You will play better if you're not hungry or thinking about getting out of there to get food or something like that. So keep that in mind. Now, that's the basics right there. Another thing I would tell you, though, before you go to the game store, check ahead of time. See if you need to pre-register. Some game stores will have limited space. Also check and see what kind of tournament they're running, because there are different ways to hold these tournaments. Typically, you see 4, sometimes 5 rounds of Swiss. And Swiss means that even if you lose, you can play all the tournaments. So that's what this is all about. These are meant to be casual tournaments. They shouldn't be like hyper-aggressive, spiky tournaments. These are meant for new players to come in, learn the game, and everyone just to have fun with the new cards. These are truly meant to be really relaxed environments. So don't feel like you're going to walk into a highly competitive scene. I mean, you will be expected to play by the rules and such, and if there's questions, there hopefully will be a judge there to call or what have you, but it really is meant to be a very casual, fun, relaxed experience, and the prize payouts are very conservative typically to reflect that, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But some stores do different things. Sometimes they'll have special tournaments that they'll have bigger prize payouts, but you may have to pay more to get into them. There's also 2-headed giant versions of the pre-release that occur, and a lot of game stores will run maybe one set of these, and other sets will be like the regular pre-release. But just make sure you know which one is which, because you will need a partner to play in 2-headed giant. Now, you could go to the store and find someone to play with, but you don't maybe want to take that risk, of course. So just make sure you're going to the proper tournament and that anything you need to do as far as pre-registration or anything like that is taken care of. So with that being said, let's get into what you're actually going to get at the tournament. Alright, this is your Rivals of Ixalan pre-release pack. So inside you're going to find 4 packs of Rivals of Ixalan, 2 packs of the original Ixalan. You'll play those together. You will also get a premium foil, rare or mythic rare date stamped card, which could be any card in the set. So between that promo card and your 6 packs, that's what you have to play with, and that's what you're going to build your deck from. You will also get the spin down die that I mentioned earlier that counts down from 20, so you can keep track of your life total. And there's usually other collateral in there, like you will find something like a slip of paper that helps you get started with building your deck, stuff like that, but it's usually pretty simple. So when it comes to deck construction, you'll be given a time limit to do that. And a couple of things I would suggest. First off, as much as you can research the set ahead of time, please do a little bit of homework, whether you're watching full set reviews like we did on the channel or just looking at card spoilers quickly, just so you get an idea of some of the cards so that it helps you expedite your deck building when the time comes. Also, too, some people like to bring pre-sleeved lands. Now, game stores will offer basic lands for you to borrow at these tournaments. They'll have land stations set up, and sometimes you have to kind of wait in line a little bit. Then you have to sleeve those lands, too, when you play with them. So if you want to save yourself a little bit of time, bring your own lands pre-sleeved, and that way you can maybe spend more time on your deck building and thinking about what you want to do, especially if you're new to the tournament scene. That might be a good idea early on. Also, too, when it comes to deck construction, minimal size of your deck and sealed is 40 cards. I would recommend sticking to 40 cards, because once you start doing 41, 42 cards, you are compromising. You're not playing your best cards anymore. And the whole idea is to build the best deck and not dilute it by anything that is even a smidgen less powerful than the other things you have. So stick to the 40. Typically that means 17 lands and 23 playable cards, but that's not always 100%. It just depends on what cards you're playing. If you feel like you're playing a lot of lower casting cost things, you have a lower curve, and maybe you have some of your cards that actually create mana, you might be able to do 16 lands and 24 playables. Or you might have a more expensive deck. You may want to think about going the other way, doing 18 lands and 22 playables. So know your deck, but the average is probably pretty firm at 17 most of the time. You also want most of your cards to be creatures in this format. Creatures are going to be the bread and butter. Look for powerful creatures or other powerful spells that you may want to include. But be careful. Don't go out of a powerful color just to play, say, one card, or don't try to splash anything that's going to be really difficult to cast either. So keep that in mind. Also, too, quick tip, one of the best things you can do when it comes to sealed is sit down, divide your cards out by color, and then look and see what color has the best removal. Because removal is such a key part of your sealed deck. And if you have a particular color that maybe is a little mediocre on creatures but has a lot of good removal, that might still be one of the colors you want to play. And then you just pick a color that maybe has stronger creatures or a really big bomb creature in it that could help you win the game. And that's probably a good starting point to really figure out what's going on. So you'll be given time to build your deck with the items that are in this box. And then, of course, the rounds will begin once that time period has been completed. Like I said, most of the time it's 4 rounds of Swiss. Sometimes you'll see tournaments of 5, but they can do other things if they choose to. All right, so you sat down, you opened your packs, you're looking at these cards, and you notice, well, there's certain mechanics here. Maybe I'm familiar with some of them, maybe I'm not. We're going to talk quickly about the mechanics of Rivals of Ixalan. Now, the good news is, all but one of these are returning from Ixalan. So if you have played some Ixalan, you'll be familiar with most of these. So we'll go through the Ixalan ones quickly first, and then we'll talk about the new one. All right, Enrage is back. So for the folks who played Ixalan, this is very familiar. These are tied in closely to dinosaurs. And basically what it says is whenever the particular creature with Enrage is dealt damage, you get some sort of benefit. So the example on the card here is whenever this is dealt damage, you'll gain 2 life. A couple of things you want to remember. This is anytime damage is dealt to it. So that could happen in combat. It could be a direct damage spell hitting it from your opponent. It could be a spell that hits it from you. It doesn't matter. If that gets damage, you get 2 life. There you go. Now, one of the common questions with Enrage is, let's say I attack with this 3/5 creature. My opponent blocks with a 3/3 and a 2/2. Does it enrage twice or just once? It actually, most of the time, will just enrage once because damage is dealt simultaneously. So it will take damage just one time, even though it's coming from 2 different creatures during the blocking. But if one of those creatures has first strike, then that's a little different. It would actually trigger twice because first strike damage would happen first, you get the enrage, and then the regular damage would happen, you get the enrage. So keep that in mind. I hear that question quite a bit, actually. All right, treasure tokens. Again, this is coming back from Ixalan. These are tied pretty closely with pirates, and you have an example on the left here is a card that's actually in Ixalan and Rivals of Ixalan. So you may see this. Some of the cards will share the same arts, maybe have different flavor text, but they really are the exact same cards with a different expansion symbol. Now, in this case, Sailor of Means is going to give you a treasure token when it enters the battlefield. So there's a lot of different ways you can get treasure tokens. You just have to kind of read the cards and see how they work. Now, why would you want treasure tokens? Well, there's a lot of benefits to them. One of the benefits is simply the fact that it can help you ramp a little bit or fix your color if you're trying to splash for a color. It just speeds your deck along sometimes. Now, there are some cards that have other payouts for treasures. Some cards will actually have you win the game when you get a certain amount of treasures. Other cards will have you be able to turn treasures in for card draw. So there are some other things you can do with them. Also remember, these count as artifacts, they count as permanents. And there is another mechanic we're going to talk about in a few moments that is looking at how many permanents you control. So this could be an important way to kind of get there. All right, Explore, another one of the mechanics that we saw from Rivals of Ixalan coming back again. This is tied pretty closely with the merfolk, but just generally, this is a potentially powerful mechanic. Now, the example you see on the screen, this creature actually explores twice. But what Explore means is when something triggers the Explorer, in this case, it's when this enters the battlefield, what you do is you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, you get to put it in your hand. If it is not a land, you have a choice to make. This will get a +1/+1 counter if it's not a land, but then you decide whether you want to keep that card on top of your library or put it in your graveyard. So it's powerful because it lets you sometimes draw a card if you hit a land, but if you don't hit a land, it makes the creature larger, and it also gives you a little bit of a decision whether you want to draw that next card on your next draw step or not, which is kind of nice when it comes to trying to maybe get to the things you want to get to. Swaggering Corsair. This is the raid mechanic. This is another one that's tied pretty closely with pirates. Pirates can be a little bit aggressive. They're trying to get in for damage, and sometimes that extra aggressiveness will pay off in the form of raid. In this case, this is a 2/2 creature for 3, but if you attack this turn with another creature, instead it will enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter, and it will be a 3/3. But raid abilities actually can cover a wide variety of different things, so read the cards carefully. Transform cards. Okay, we saw these in Ixalan as well. These can be a variety of different things, from artifacts, enchantments, creatures, so on. So this particular example happens to be a legendary artifact, but as you can see here, all of these will share something in common. They will ask you to do something, and if you accomplish what it asks you to do, you have the ability to transform this and turn the card around to its other side. So in this case, Profane Procession is an enchantment until you exile the third target creature with it, and then it's going to transform into Tomb of the Dusk Rose, which has a very different ability, as you can see here. Now, some of these are may transform abilities. If it says may transform, it's your choice whether you do it or not at the moment. But if it just says to do it, you just have to do it. In this case, you don't get the May option. It just kind of transforms, so keep that in mind. All right, here's the new mechanic that's brand new to Rivals of Ixalan. It is called Ascend. And it says here, if you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. So what is the City's Blessing is the first question. Well, the City's Blessing is a marker. It's a way to keep track of a game state that you have achieved this Ascend mechanic. It is not an actual permanent. It is not like truly a real Magic card, although there's obviously a card that represents it that you see on the right here. It is not something that can be interacted with. Your opponents can't destroy this. They can't take it away from you. It won't go away even if you go below 10 permanents later on in the game. It will always stay as a marker that you achieve this. If you don't have the special marker card, that's okay. You just keep track of it with pen and paper or whatever you want to use, right? To know that you have that. Now, what about resolving this spell that you see on your left side? How do you know when you hit Ascend? Well, so here's what happens. This spell is a creature spell. So you're going to cast this as you normally would. It would go onto the stack. Now, your opponents, if they're trying to stop you from getting your 10th permanent, let's pretend this is going to be your 10th permanent when it enters the battlefield. They have a moment to interact with it before it enters the battlefield. They could use a counter spell or something like that. But once the spell resolves, it's going to immediately check to see if you have 10 permanents. If you do, wonderful, you are going to get the City's Blessing. And in this example, you're also going to get +3/+0 on this creature. Now, that's the reason you want to get the City's Blessing, because there's a lot of cards in the set that actually get better if you have the City's Blessing. Now, typically, those are the same cards that check to see if you qualify for it, too. But once you get it once, it doesn't matter. You don't have to worry about getting it a second time or anything. You either have it or you don't have it, basically. So once this spell resolves and hits the battlefield, it's going to check to see if you have 10 permanents. Now, at that point, your opponent can't interrupt that process. There's nothing they can do. For example, if they try to use an instant removal spell, it's already too late. If you had 10 permanents and this successfully resolves, and it's your 10th, then you got it. You got the City's Blessing. There's nothing they can do to stop it at that point. That's true if this is already on the board and you resolve another permanent. Maybe it's just dropping a land. Maybe it's playing another creature, whatever it is. Once that hits the battlefield, you got the City's Blessing. There's no way to disrupt or slow that down. It doesn't use the stack, in other words. So keep that in mind. Now, creatures aren't the only way to get the Ascend mechanic. There are actually some sorceries you'll find, like this one, that are going to be better if you have the City's Blessing. Now, remember, sorceries or instants, they don't count as actual permanents. So this won't count towards the City's Blessing. But when this resolves, it's going to check to see if you have at least 10 permanents. And if you do, and you didn't have the City's Blessing before, you will get it, and then you'll get the special ability. So if you don't have the City's Blessing, and this card here, Secrets of the Golden City, you'll draw 2 cards. But when it resolves, if you have it, or you're getting it because you now have 10 permanents and this thing is checking for that, then you will get to draw 3 cards instead of 2, so the card gets better for what you pay for it. So that's how it works. Read the cards carefully. Again, there's going to be different variations of different things. But just remember, once the spell resolves, if your opponent can't, say, counterspell it or stop it on the stack, that's their last chance. Once you have 10 permanents or more and you have something that's checking for Ascend, whether it's a spell like this or a creature, you got the City's Blessing. It's yours and it can never be taken away. All right, let's talk quickly about archetypes. Now, when we talk about archetypes in a set, we're looking for synergies, things that are going to play well together that will unlock the power within each other, combo well, in other words. Now, when you're playing draft, archetypes are a little more important. But in sealed, I think it's important to be aware of archetypes, because even though you're not going to necessarily get the full-fledged like pirate deck out of a sealed pool, knowing that pirates are going to have some synergies together and what those synergies are very important, because you may have some small combos. So we're going to talk about some of the major tribal archetypes real quick, and then I will go on and talk about maybe some other options you have when building your deck. All right, let's look at vampires first. Now, all these tribes aren't really changing that much from Ixalan. They're just doing more of what we're used to seeing. So keep that in mind. So vampires, pretty much the same idea. They're still in white. They're still in black. They're still trying to go wide and take over the board state with a lot of small creatures. A lot of times they'll produce small 1/1 vampire lifelink tokens. You'll see that quite a bit. Or just small creatures that are pretty aggressive. They'll also have a lot of lifelink abilities attached to them or other cards around them that help you gain life. But there's also payouts for that life gain. In other words, you see the card on your right where you're going to be drawing cards at the expense of life at some point, also based on the amount of vampires you have. So the more vampires on the board, the more cards you draw, but also the more life you lose. But that's evened out by the fact that a lot of your vampire cards are going to help you gain life. Also, too, you'll find cards that will have a special trigger when you gain life, and you get a bonus when that happens. So that's really what vampires are still trying to do. Dinosaurs. Now, they're in 3 colors. White, red, and green. You don't have to play all 3 colors. You can still play only 2 colors and focus on dinosaurs. Their main mechanic, like I mentioned earlier, is Enrage, which you see here on the middle card. But you'll find a lot of large dinosaurs. A few have flying, some have trample. A lot of times they'll produce tokens, like you see a 3/3 green dinosaur creature token here. They're more about going tall, though. You really want to have big creatures that are just going to go in and fight and just kind of stomp over your opponent. That's what the dinosaurs are trying to do. Merfolk. Merfolk are a little bit tricky. They play maybe a slower game sometimes, but what they're trying to do is beat your opponent through card advantage, +1/+1 tokens, and evasion. So you're going to find Merfolk sometimes that are going to help you draw cards. You're going to find Merfolk to explore a lot of times. You're going to find Merfolk to find ways to get +1/+1 counters on each other. Sometimes you'll have unblockable Merfolk. So they're a little trickier. They may be a harder tribe if you're a new Magic player to really wrap your head around, but you're going to find them in blue and green, and they can have some powerful synergies together. Now, of course, Pirates. Pirates are in 3 colors as well. That's blue, black, and red. Again, don't have to play all 3 colors if you don't want to or don't have a pool that supports it. But what Pirates are trying to do is they're tied in closely with raids. So they want to attack early and often and get bonuses from those attacks. Because of that, you're going to find a lot of very aggressive Pirates, low casting cost Pirates that can attack in that have various forms of evasion, like flying. Sometimes even they're just plain unblockable. Then you're going to find some that will have menace. So all different ways to try to create a situation where you have good lines of attack to unlock the raid. This is also the tribe, of course, of treasures, so they'll have a lot of ways to create treasures and perhaps ramp out a little bit, fix your color, and again, help you get to that ascend mechanic, because remember, those treasure tokens do count as permanents when they're on the battlefield for you. So overall, if you're looking for something that's just aggressive and kind of fun, Pirates might be the color if you have the right cards there. Now, what if you look at your cards and you don't have any of those tribes really consistently? That's okay, because it's sealed. They don't have to be perfect. If you have small amounts of different tribes, you can actually mix them together and still have a pretty good deck on your hands. A few other things you may want to look for is, like in blue and white, there's a lot of flyers, for example, and things that help flyers along. These could be flyers that are vampires and flyers that are pirates. It just doesn't matter at that point. So put flyers in your deck and try to win that way. Sometimes you can just overwhelm your opponent with a lot of evasion. Another thing you could look at is your black and your green cards, because they have a strong explorer element, again, regardless of tribe that you're looking at. And there's even some situations where Explorer can help you put cards in your graveyard, and you'll find other cards that might help you bring them either back to your hand later, or there's even one card that will let you take it and put it directly into the battlefield if you're lucky enough to get that. So look for those type of synergies too. Even just aggro synergies, like look at white and red, for example. You might pick up some vampires and some pirates that work really well together, just being aggressive and just getting in there for some early damage, and then hopefully maybe you can finish your opponent off with some late damage spells or something like that. So you don't have to be tied to a tribe, so don't feel like that's something that is going to be a bad card pool. For example, if you don't have a ton of pirates, right? You probably won't, as a matter of fact, when you play seals. You're going to have to kind of mix and match a little bit to find the best deck out of what you have there. All right, with that being said, I hope that at least sets you up, gets you on the right track for these pre-release events. Let me know in the comments below, either this video or one of the future videos, if you decide to go to the pre-release, how you did, what kind of experience you had. And like I said at the beginning of the video, just have fun, because this is not meant to be like crazy serious. Some people will probably take it crazy serious sometimes, but really this is meant to sit down, play with the new cards for the first time, have a good time, learn the interactions, share what you've opened with everybody. They're really just meant to be fun celebrations of the new cards and the new sets. So go and have a good time. If you win, wonderful. And if you don't, that's fine too. You probably learned a little something along the way, and that's what's important. Until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe. Have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.